Hi, these comments are for one of my students in my online TOEFL course. And this is Michael from OTC, OnlineTOEFLCourse.com. And I think you are one of my 30-day TOEFL speaking bootcamp course students, Hua. And you're really busy with speaking practice because speaking practice plus feedback plus studying the recommended lessons, that equals a very, very high TOEFL score. So let's see how you're doing with your speaking practice today. Okay, I think you're doing integrated practice, right? So if we look at the rubrics, okay, I think I have them right here. I always like to just look at the official rubrics every single time I grade a writing or speaking practice test. It keeps me really focused on what you're being evaluated on and what you can do to improve. All right, here we go.
The professor talks about some adaptation that animals under the ground have in order to help them to survive in this environment. The first adaptation is how they move. Uh, because the soil is thick, so they mostly have some physical features to help them moving. She provides an example to illustrate this by talking about moles who have very strong front legs to help him digging the ground. These legs are like shovel. The second adaptation is how can they protect themselves from the environment, like how they protect their eyes. She talks also about moles who have very tiny small eye covered with thin skin, which is also covered with hair to protect its eyes from the small particles while digging the ground. The professor talks about some adaptation that animal under the ground.
Okay, we got it. Okay, so yeah, I think you got a few language use issues on this one. There's one thing that stands out on my mind. I don't know if you guys at YouTube picked up on this, but gerunds and infinitives. You seem to have a lot of problems differentiating between do you want helping or help or dig or digging or to dig. You're you're not always sure what. So that's probably the main thing. I'm going to listen to your practice test again, and I'm going to point out those specific language use issues so that you can be aware of what they are. But you definitely want to study gerunds and infinitives in the grammar part of my online TOEFL course. You really want to do that based on this. Okay, let's listen to it one more time.
The professor talks about some adaptation that animals under the ground have
You want to say that animals, make sure you make that plural, animals under the
in order
ground.
to help them to survive in this environment.
Okay.
The first adaptation is how they move.
How about to survive in this subterranean environment? If you want to be even better with your vocabulary, that means surviving in the ground.
Uh, because the soil is thick, so they mostly have some physical features to help them moving.
Yeah, you're having a lot of pacing problems right there, 15 to 20 seconds.
She provides an example to illustrate this by talking about moles who have very strong front legs to help him digging the ground.
To help them dig the ground. So the problem is when you use help, you can probably say to help them to dig or to help them dig, but usually instead of the infinitive you use what's called a bare infinitive or the base form of the verb. So there's a few verbs where that's the case. You have verbs like let, help, and make. I made my friend wash my car. I don't say I made my friend to wash my car. So you want to remember when you're studying the lesson on gerunds and infinitives, which verbs introduce infinitives, which verbs introduce gerunds, and then which verbs require simply the base form of the verb after those verbs. That's what you got to get used to.
These legs are like shovel. Um,
These snakes are like what? Let me listen to it again.
this by talking about moles who have a very strong front.
No, moles which have. Usually, which or that you refer to things. You use who to refer to people. But Michael, my dog's name is Lucky. My dog Lucky who. So in that case, if you have an animal or a pet and it has a name, it is possible to use who to refer to pets which have names. But I'm not going to say mole who. I'm going to say the mole which or the mole that.
legs to help him digging the ground. These legs are like shovel. Um,
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding what you're saying
the
there.
second adaptation is how can they protect themselves from the environment.
No, the second adaptation is how they can protect themselves, not how can they. So because you're using that within an independent clause, you're using that not as a question, but you're using it more as a noun clause. And noun clauses take statement word order, not question word order. So if you want to learn more about that, again, I have a good lesson in my the grammar part of my course that focuses on noun clauses.
Like how they protect their eyes. She says she talks also
Yeah, notice like how they protect their eyes. So the second time your word order was good. So you got back to that statement word order.
about moles who have very tiny
Moles which have.
small eye covered with thin skin which is also covered with hair to protect its eyes from the small particles while digging the ground.
Okay.
The
All right. So I think on this one, I don't think this is a good response, really. I'm going to put you at 2.0 to 2.5. I'm going to say you're probably 15 to 16 points on this particular speaking task. So, considerable problems with both pacing, which is delivery, even tone. You can work on varying your tone a lot more than you did. And then you also had some problems constructing your sentences and using the most appropriate grammar based on those sentence constructions. So that's why I'm giving you the score that I am. All right, thank you.